I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. It doesn't take too many days without power to become a real problem, especially when it's this cold. Line crews have been working around the clock, fighting the ice and the frigid temps. Can I get an amen for that crew? But they're going to get us booted back up, but it's going to take a long while for some of us to get the lights back on, and maybe more importantly, the heat. Slow-going power restoration is the focus of the day. We have officials from Middle Tennessee Electric and Nashville Electric Service who are going to join us this hour. We'll get a live report from a warming shelter and updates from Metro's latest press conference, which just concluded. And we'll take some of your calls. What questions do you have about booting back up, or maybe about, dripping faucets? We're all ears. We'll give you the number when it's time. We're going to start with an update from the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. Chief of Staff Alex Pelham is on the line live. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on This is Nashville.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is sort of an ever-evolving question, but can you kind of put this ice storm in perspective for us for the state of Tennessee? Do we ever see this many people without power at once?
This is definitely a storm that, while not unprecedented maybe, is definitely one that is unparalleled. Every disaster we face is unique in each of its different ways. We see population centers like Nashville, Sumner County, Williamson County, but you also have some of our more rural counties that were hit, dealing with Hardeman, Hardin, McNairy, and some of those down along our Mississippi-Alabama border received significantly more ice than Sumner and Davidson.
Yeah. So the power outage numbers might not impress you when you compare them to the counties, but it's a wide-ranging effect for those less populous counties.
Yeah, I would say that we're not talking about impressive. If you have a kid and your husband and wife with children or an elderly grandmother, one is a number that's too many. If we're talking about who we care about. And so that's the biggest priority that we have as an agency, working with our electrical partners, whether it be NES, whether it be TICA, with our municipals, is working to find ways to work together to get this power infrastructure back as quickly as possible, because we know once power's back, it begins our restoration of normalcy for our communities, and it keeps people safer.
Can you tell us about this welfare check system that TEMA has spun up, which I think you've only done a couple of times in the history of the agency? How's that working?
Yeah, so we launched that working with our partners at TBI. The number 1-800-TBI-FIND or 1-800-824-3463. And the idea behind this is we know that there are communications issues in some of our areas, especially some of our more rural areas, with our comms towers being unable to be accessed that may have damages or issues with generator fuel. So what we've done is, through this partnership, we've allowed those that are concerned about their loved ones, are concerned about family, friends, elderly neighbors, to be able to call and to have a central point that they can go and express their concern and have someone help and go out and look and make sure that person is okay.
Is this correct that in Davidson County, like Metro is doing its own welfare check, so not to use that number?
I wouldn't say not to use that number, but I would rather someone call and check on someone twice than not at all. Because that's how we are, that's how we should be, as Tennesseans, that we're looking at this. But there are also spots on Metro Nash's webpage, and you can check out how to look for these things on TEMA's webpage as well.
Okay, and that number is 1-800-TBI-FIND, correct?
Correct.
Fatalities. Obviously these things are always something that's updated over time as we learn more about each death. But have we seen any fatalities related to the cold or directly from falling trees?
So we have 5 confirmed fatalities from the Tennessee Department of Health. But one of the things that, there are times where you'll hear rumors of things, you'll hear things, you'll see things posted on social media. One of the things that we do is we verify 100% before we report out fatalities, as well as to ensure that the families are notified. So of those 5, we have one that was in Haywood County, one that was in Crockett, one that was in O'Bine, and 2 that were in Davidson that were considered storm-related deaths.
Are we still under a state of emergency? And what does that really mean for us?
Yeah, so the state of emergency, it started with Governor Lee declaring a state of emergency, which allows us to apply to the federal government for an emergency declaration. So this is pre the storm hitting. There are a couple of different ways that declarations hit. You can ask for what's called an emergency declaration. It's very limited in the Stafford Act, as well as a major disaster declaration. When the major disaster declaration comes in, it's very wide open. So that's when you start to see what we call individual assistance, which is where money goes into, the assistance goes to residents and citizens. And so where we are right now is, since we got this before, the president granted the emergency declaration, we have the ability to pull in what's called direct federal assistance. So what this means is we're able to pull in things like generators, which we've already been working with the federal government on, Sawyer teams, which are kind of cut and toss, so we can start to clear these roads so our power crews can be safer. They can get in some of these areas where downed trees are. So as we do that, what the next step in this is, we'll be working with our communities and in Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee to do damage assessments. So we'll look at infrastructure that are damaged, like water systems, our power lines, and when we do this, that allows us, if we meet a certain level, to apply for what's called a major disaster declaration, which will open up a lot of different benefits to both government entities as well as potentially individuals.
And last thing on the individual assistance, are you saying that if the damage is extensive enough and we get the major disaster declaration, there might be money to help individual property owners with some of this cleanup that perhaps their homeowner's insurance doesn't help with?
Yeah, so that is a big maybe. I want to be very clear. I don't want to set any unrealistic expectations here. But so there are 2 types of assistance that come. One is public assistance. It's a very outlined per capita for government. So if your things like our lines at NES that are damaged, transformers, things of that effect, they go into that number. When we look at individual assistance, we start to see the impact to the communities. We see deaths. There are a lot of different that are a little more, there are different types of factors that go into that aren't just numbers, if that makes sense. So what I can say is Crisis Cleanup is a partner that we work with, and information can be found on the TEMA website. They're a nonprofit, and they work with individuals to help with some of what you were talking about with cleanup. So even beforehand, before a potential major disaster declaration, Crisis Cleanup is a great group that will have a high demand. So understand that, but they're a great group to work with.
Well, Alex Pelham, Chief of Staff for the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, thank you so much for blocking out some time. I know your laptop's dinging away at you there, so we'll let you get back to business. Thank you so much for the update here on This is Nashville.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Great timing on that ding. If you're just tuning in, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking about slow-going power restoration. Zach Small and his wife Joanna just welcomed baby Otto last Thursday, January 22nd, less than 48 hours before the city would slow to a halt. He came a week after his due date. They induced labor, hoping to beat the storm, in fact. Then, with a 3-day-old baby, they lost power in their East Nashville home. Neighbors pitched in to keep them warm, and this little family settled in to stick it out.
We have a generator, and we do have a gas stove, so and we were already prepped to have the baby, so we've got plenty of food and stuff. It's just, yeah, I don't know. They don't it's crazy to bring home a baby in general, and then to add this on top of it is just a whole nother level. So I've got, an extension cord running up to the nursery, and we've got a couple space heaters up there, and we've just kind of been holding out in there. So yeah, we just tried to focus all the heat in one room, in his room. So It's got to be like, in the mid 60s. So it's holding good. So that's just kind of trying to focus holding down the fort.
Zach Small, you've got all of us parents out here imagining those early days at home with a little one and thinking about how you deal with this. But good news, Otto and his parents now have power back on, so that's encouraging. So the Smalls live in East Nashville, covered by Nashville Electric Service. We'll have NES Vice President Brent Baker on later this hour, hopefully. But we start with Middle Tennessee Electric, which covers 11 counties, including parts of Rutherford, Cannon, Williamson, and Wilson. Spokesperson Amy Byers joins us live. Thank you for making time for This Is Nashville.
Well, thanks for having me.
What kind of progress are y'all seeing with Middle Tennessee Electric's service area?
Well, we're in the slow go part of it now. Right now, we still have around 2,300 members without power. And of those, the majority of them are single outages. So this is where a tree has maybe fallen on the service line, maybe has ripped the meter base or the riser off the house, or these little individual outages, and they just take a lot of time. So, our restoration is not going as fast as we would like. And then on top of that, you get one thing fixed, the outages are still happening. So, when we have big like thunderstorms or tornadoes, you have this outage number and you just whittle it away, but the outages pretty much are all done after the storm has passed. That is not the situation when it comes to ice storms. The ice is continually weakening those limbs. They may not fall immediately. They may fall the next day. They may fall when the ice starts melting. So you're constantly dealing with the addition of new outages while you're trying to repair other outages. I know one of our crews reported yesterday they had fixed a main line, a primary line, and they had loaded up and they were driving away and they looked in the rearview mirror, and as they were pulling away, a limb fell on the span that they had just repaired. So, these are the things that we're dealing with, but we are working around the clock. And we actually brought in, I talked a minute ago about a lot of these being individual services that are out. So yesterday we brought in 70 service crews from other areas, surrounding states. These are crews that were working their own areas. They've got the power back on there, and they call and say, "Hey, we can come your way." So we had 70 coming in all yesterday afternoon. The second they came in, we put them to work, and a lot of these crews worked through the night and are continuing to work today. So we're hoping to really start getting that number down.
Yeah. So you're saying the easy stuff is kind of done, but you've still got 2,300 in the Middle Tennessee Electric Service area that are out. How long could it be for some of these folks? Worst case scenario.
We've been asked that question numerous times, especially on our social media pages, and we would love to give, to tell people, yes, everybody will be back on by a certain time. It is impossible to give restoration times. Like I said, we're just working through them as we can. We know our members want to be on as soon as possible, and we want them on as soon as possible. And I can tell you, we're into, day 3 of this event. And so our crews are starting to wear and get tired. They're not going to stop. We work in shifts. So we have the day, we have crews working during the day. They work for like 16-hour shifts. They go home, they rest. Another crew takes their place. So we are continuing around the clock 24/7. But that still just takes a toll. And we all want to make sure that we get everybody on as soon as possible.
Yeah. On just sort of the specifics here of these individual outages, I know I've seen NES kind of talk a little bit about this, like whose responsibility is what. Right. If they're looking at a power line that connects them to the main line to their house and it's on the ground, do they what are they supposed to do? Are you supposed to fix it yourself somehow?
It depends on what has happened. So if just the wire, maybe the tree fell on the service wire, it pulled the service wire from the connections, didn't do any damage to your meter base, your weatherhead, the riser pole, any of that. And that's a simple thing of us coming and hooking you back up. If it did rip that weatherhead, that riser, the meter base off your house, which does happen, or causes damage, if the tree maybe fell on your meter and could have caused some damage to that meter base, that's going to be more repairs. And the responsibility of the the riser pole, the meter base, those things, I mean, that goes to the homeowner. We're going to be responsible for the meter that's in there, and we're going to be responsible for getting the wire back to you. We do have put a graphic and some information that really explains this on our social media pages. So if any of our members are listening and they have this situation and they're curious about what they're responsible for, you can go to our social media pages and scroll through till you find that. I think we about midday yesterday we posted that. We'll probably have it on there again as the outage continues. But yeah, and again, if you're confused or you just need to know what your next steps are, certainly give us a call, 877-777-9020, and talk to our member service people, and they'll be happy to help you and get you to engineering, get you the information you need.
Well, thank you so much, Amy Byers of Middle Tennessee Electric. Thank you for making time for us in a very busy moment. Best of luck to you and all the crews that are out there working in the cold. We're going to be talking about booting back up in Middle Tennessee. We'll be back with the latest from Metro Nashville's press conference that just ended. We'll also take a few calls. What do you want to know about how we're all going to get back on the grid? Join us on the air at 615-760-2000. Bonus points if you're joining us from your car, which you're sitting in because you can't actually get out while you charge your devices. Stay with us. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Well, today is all about our slow-going power restoration. Metro Nashville has responded to the incident by deploying round-the-clock crews to restore power, plow streets, open warming shelters for individuals with nowhere to go. And, of course, we've heard that same from outlying counties around Middle Tennessee. Just heard from Middle Tennessee Electric. Joining me in the studio right now is WPLN's Nina Cardona. Had an early morning, had a late afternoon yesterday. Has been in the studio since, Sunday or so. She's your morning host, typically, host of the Nash Villager podcast. Thank you for all you're doing this week.
I kind of joke that I live here sometimes, but this week I've lived here. That's
Quite
fine.
literally.
That's fine.
On the line, we've got WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams giving us the latest from Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell's 11:30 press briefing. Cynthia, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Cynthia, what's the latest?
Yeah, so I just got out of the virtual briefing from the city. They had someone from Department of Emergency Communications, NES, NDOT, Metro Water, the police department, and of course the mayor, kind of giving just a all-around update on where things stand. We heard from NES that they are out in the field. They've got crews from many states, not just in Tennessee, working in Nashville today. They gave a little bit of a more specific update on some of the neighborhoods that they're really focusing on today.
Where are those?
Brick Church, North Nashville, Bellevue, West Nashville, Hendersonville, Allegiant Fields, Madison, East Nashville, Forest Hills, and Brentwood. Although this is not complete, they said that they are working in other neighborhoods as well, although those are neighborhoods that can expect to see some.
Now, Cindy, yesterday we were hearing from Metro that they had pulled in extra linemen and there were 300 working. I understand there's been an even bigger number than that now.
Yeah, I think they are trying to pull in as many people as possible. They're crews from other states. So they are scaling up and they're looking to just accelerate. They talked about kind of these three stages. They were working on stabilizing the situation, now scaling up, adding crews, And then hopefully that will lead them into kind of accelerating restoring power across the city. But they've restored 100,000 customers so far. But of course, that means there are many more to go.
Now, I know the next phase after all the ice damages all of the power is that we have a possibility of sort of a next phase of damage and problems that deal with water. And you heard from Metro Water today, right?
Yes. So there's a couple of different things that are going on with water. They are encouraging people to drip their faucets. They said that they could see that people are doing that. They gave stats that typically Metro Water is using up around 95 million gallons of water. And today it was around 130 million gallons. So that means people are being diligent about dripping their water. They gave some specific stats about the cost of dripping their water. They know that people might be concerned about what that could do to their water bill. So they said that 100 gallons of water at Metro Water typically costs $1.70. And if you let it drip, that's about 40 gallons per day. So letting multiple faucets run will probably cost people around $1 to $2. So they're encouraging people to hopefully not let cost be a barrier, keep dripping their faucets, because the thing is we are going to start seeing some water main break activity as things kind of, de-thaw. So they are also encouraging people to call in if you see water running in the streets. That is indicative of a main break. So please call Metro Water if you are seeing that.
Yeah, so the concerns we always have after storms like this is that the water main break, also the water pipes in your house, they start to break when things start to thaw. So
you may not know you have a burst
next.
pipe yet. Yeah.
That's right. It's still frozen solid right now, but when it thaws out, that's when you're going to find out that it bursts.
Can you talk a little, Cindy? Can you talk a little bit about tree removal? Like, do we understand whose responsibilities what? Like, who has to make sure roads are clear?
Yes. And the one I just wanted to add while I'm back on, they're looking at 3 areas for water main breaks: Oak Hill, Jolton, and Love Circle.
Okay, good.
So they said if you're in that area and you see water running in the streets, that is really the place to call into Metro Water.
Oak Hill, Jolton, and Love Circle. That's good. Go ahead, Cindy.
With regards to tree removal, it's really NDOT. They said they have 15 different crews doing vegetation removal today. And more crews who are finishing up snow removal will then transition to vegetation tree removal. They did mention that, right now they're not wanting to block up like ditches and reservoirs, which are kind of there for stormwater drainage. So right now you might see a lot of trees kind of cleared into the right of way in the streets. And they said that's kind of something that's just has to happen. And then they will do a county-wide sweep of all vegetation after snow is handled. So just kind of be on the lookout that, your streets might be blocked by trees that are being cleared out. But NDOT is hard at work on that, getting trees removed. They are focused on, there's different kind of levels of streets that they prioritize. So like the main arteries are the focus, as that's really important for getting emergency services out there. Then there's they call them secondaries, which are the streets that connect to those main arteries. And then after that, they're post-secondary. So those, which are a lot of the streets that we live on, are kind of often the bottom priority.
Cynthia, I know one of the things that we first learned from TEMA last night was that we now have 2 confirmed deaths in Nashville related to the weather. Do you have any information about what happened with those circumstances?
Yes. So we heard from the police department that there were 2 confirmed deaths in Nashville. One was a woman living in an assisted living facility. She was 90 years old. She lost power and had fallen inside of her apartment, but they are waiting on the medical examiner for official cause of death. The second situation was near Wedgwood Avenue. A woman had slid down the hill. She was found by a passerby and declared dead at the scene.
Wow. So basically exposure.
Yeah, they didn't list cause of death officially for either of those, but.
Well, it certainly shows the seriousness of the situation, even just learning some of the, initial specifics there. Can you, just as we let you go here, can you talk about warming shelters? I mean, are those getting any more active?
They are. It sounds like, so last night there were 439 Nashvillians using those warming centers. There are centers at the fairgrounds, Madison, and Southeast Community Centers, which have overnight warming facilities. And the kind of newer thing is that the Department of Emergency Communications is staffing a transportation hotline, so helping people get to those warming shelters if they need. So if you are in need of that, you can do that through DEC, so through calling 311. They are reiterating, please do not call 911
right.
Unless it is a real emergency.
And I've got that number. I guess there's the 311. Also, the direct hotline for rides to warming centers is 615-401-1712. So 615-401-1712. And did I hear right that there's lunch in Richland Park today, if you can get there?
They didn't talk about that at the briefing, but it does look like that.
All right. Well, I've got that in my notes here from producer Mary Mancini. So lunch in Richland Park. I don't know if you're too late for it, but the sun may still be out where you are. Cynthia, thank you so much for this update, and certainly people can continue following along with your reporting at WPLN.org. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. Nina Cardone is also in the studio with me. We're going to take a few phone calls. If you'd like to chat, how are you keeping warm as you wait for power? What questions do you have about how the grid's getting repaired? The number's 615-760-2000. We'll have Nashville Electric Service Vice President Brent Baker on with us at the end of the hour. If you've got questions, we'll try to get the answer, but you'll need to call now, 615-760-2000. On the line from a warming shelter in Madison is Ellie Kane. She and her husband, David Klein, were able to leave their East Nashville home for the Madison warming shelter last night to avoid having to spend another night in the cold. Both Ellie and David have some health concerns, making this week exceedingly challenging for them. But Ellie, I'm so glad that you're in a warm place, and thanks for joining This is Nashville.
Yes, I'm very grateful.
What's the setup in the shelter there? Is it crowded? Do you have space? What are you doing?
We are in the gymnasium on beds, and cots, and there's probably about 50 people on this floor, and then they have the mothers with children and families with children upstairs.
Well, what was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for you and David? What happened that you're like, we got to brave the elements and go find somewhere warm to be?
Well, it had gotten to the point it was so cold I thought I might die.
What do you mean?
I was crying. I was scared. There's a difference between being cold and bone cold and confused and scared. I have health issues. I'm 71. I thought, I better find a way out of here.
How did you get to the warming shelter?
Well, I had the luck of a couple angels. My husband and I are both artists with Daybreak Arts, and our beloved director and her husband, Nicole and Josh, came and got us. And I can't even really walk on ice at all, so they were hanging on to me as I was hanging on to my walker to carefully get out of my house.
Wow. Well, Neighbors Been Helping Neighbors. Big shout out to them. What's the mood of folks? Like, do people know what to do as they sort of twiddle their thumbs there, waiting for, word that their power's back on?
Thank God for phones and tablets.
Yeah, no kidding. How long do you think you and David will stay?
I guess we'll wait until we get a text from NES that our power is back on.
I guess you haven't gotten that yet.
No.
Wow.
And, biding our time, grateful to be here.
Yeah. That's Ellie Kane at the warming shelter in Madison. Thanks so much for using some of your precious cell phone battery to talk to us here on This is Nashville.
I've got some backup chargers.
Got backup chargers. Thanks so much. We're taking some phone calls right now, 615-760-2000. We'll be talking with a vice president from NES here in just a moment. We got this voicemail from a listener ahead of the show urging patience.
Alex Joyce calling from the west side of town. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be frustrated because their power isn't back real fast. As an engineer, I know you have to start at the nexus points from which power is distributed, the main distribution points, the big transformer yards that you see with chain link fences around them. And then you spread out from them, adding neighborhood after neighborhood and street. So just as a citizen, I know that I have to hold on until I get power because I live pretty far away from a transformer or a main power substation.
Well, Alex, we appreciate the call and appreciate your word of patience to those of us who are still patiently waiting. Had this comment from Jane in Wedgwood, Houston, saying that there's still no cable or Wi-Fi at her place. And that's making it hard to reach anyone. And even on the way to the office here in Metro Center today, driving through some areas, I felt like I didn't have cell phone service. I was taking a Lyft. Don't worry, I wasn't texting and driving. Not that I would never do that. But she wants to know how to reach people. And a valid concern, Jane, and that can be very tricky. Let's take one more call. Rachel in Antioch, you're on This Is Nashville. Go ahead.
I just had a very nice neighbor that helped me out when I was trying to take my dog out right after the ice had kind of fallen, and it was kind of very slushy underneath everything. So she had obviously picked like the worst spot to actually handle her business, and it was right where I would have completely fallen through ice into slush. And he luckily had waterproof shoes, so he actually even helped me, clean up her business so that it wasn't gross around the complex. So
how do your dogs feel about walking on ice?
So not a fan. One tries to eat it. The other one is just very suspicious. So they have their own little personalities come out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the call, Rachel. Join us on air right now. The number is 615-760-2000. Here in about 5 minutes, we should have the vice president of Nashville Electric Service. We're going to talk a little, get the latest on power restoration, and also answer a few of the burning questions that have come up from folks who are flooding phone lines at times, and that's where we'll be. The number is 615-760-2000. So let's take a call from Mark, also in Antioch. You're on This Is Nashville. Go ahead. Well, Mark, I'm having trouble answering it.
Blake, what she was saying about the pets reminds me of another kind of point. My parents have had an issue with they live out in the country, and their cat can be indoor, outdoor. She wants to be outside through all of this, going out again and again and again. So they keep opening the door, and it keeps letting in the cold. And that actually does remind me of something that Tima made a point in its flash report this last night that I was looking at this morning. The latest the advisories they're giving to everybody is that they are encouraging everybody to try to conserve power. And one of those things is don't open the door any more often than you have to. Try to keep that heat inside the house. And also they're advising people to keep that thermostat at 68 or below. You want to stay toasty. You're feeling that. But we do, even though we have a lot of people off of the grid, we do need to be mindful of making sure that we're not stressing the power grid too much, just to make sure that we can maintain that service as more people are added back on.
Nina, briefly talk about this cold snap, because it's obviously very cold. Do we get cold snaps like this very often?
I don't remember one quite like this. And I've lived most of my life here.
Yes.
I'm 50 years old, and except for college, I've all the years that I can remember were spent here in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
I wasn't here for the 94 storm, which is one everybody talks about. And that would probably be the closest. But I have never had the experience of hearing all the limbs continue to fall and fall and fall and fall like we had this time. This is incredibly rare. This does seem to be kind of temperatures on a line. As I was looking back in the days, the very few days in the past when the Cumberland would sometimes freeze. Now, that hasn't happened since 1940. Because we have dams now, and that changed. The river is a very different river than it used to be. It's deeper now, it's faster, and that keeps things from freezing. But there are a handful of times, I think it's 5 times in recorded history, that the Cumberland froze enough for people to walk out on it. In fact, when the founders of the city, the group that came from kind of the North Carolina, Tennessee, what is now the North Carolina, Tennessee state line with James Robertson first came on horseback to Nashville, they might have made Nashville the center of town where East Nashville is now, except the Cumberland was frozen. And they decided to walk across and settle up on the bluffs. But that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, so you don't expect the Cumberland River to freeze, but yes, it's cold, and it's going to be cold for quite a while longer. We're talking about power restoration this hour. When we return, we're going to talk more specifically about what's going on with NES. Stay with us through the break. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. It's an hour about the long haul of power restoration. Line crews still have a lot of work to do. With the latest here on the show is Brent Baker, Vice President, Chief Customer Innovation Officer for Nashville Electric Service. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the line on what is probably the busiest time of your life. Brent, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for helping us get the information out. We know customers are needing a lot of information and certainly deserve that information as we're working to get through this event together.
Well, briefly, what's the latest on progress?
Yeah, so we have roughly 135,000 customers currently without power. Our peak was 230,000. We've gotten through 100,000. We have 207 broken poles that we have reported across the service area, and so we're working through that. We have been scaling up our resources, which is really we had to start to stabilize the system and get a handle on all that was needed and scale up our resources. This morning, we started with 740 line workers. We're scaling up to 925 tonight, plus another 207 vegetation management crews. How we manage a storm like this is to start at those biggest outage main circuits, 1,000 or 2,000 customers or more, and start to restore those. That does the biggest volume of restoration and really helps those customers get on and allows us to then get to those side feeds that can get more customers on.
Yeah. So you're saying, and then we heard something similar from Middle Tennessee Electric, that like the quick stuff is kind of over and now it's going to take longer because this is the more complicated restoration and smaller numbers of houses and homes at once. Is that what you're seeing at NES at this point?
At this point, we're still in that working on those very large numbers.
Okay.
So our outage was 230,000 customers. So it'll take us a little bit to get down to the small numbers that are left that are being referred to. At the end of any event like this, there will be those small numbers that are more difficult to get to as well. This is challenging in the fact that we've got to get the road cleared and working closely with NDOT. They're doing a great job of getting us that access, but then getting the trees cleared, getting the poles set, and making that progress. So we are working on the 1,000 to 2,000 or more sections of line today.
How does this really work? Like, when do you decide, okay, now we can switch this big group of houses on? Do you have to check every single home to make sure they're connected? Can you do that remotely at all?
So there are protective devices to make sure that we can restore that main line without having to check every individual house before we turn it on. We need to turn that main line on and then begin to see which one of the customers came on. Once we see the customers that might need more work to be done on their home, which is an important reminder, the part on your home that holds the meter that goes up through the roof is called the weatherhead. If that has pulled away because of the service wire, we encourage customers to begin working with an electrician to get ahead of that so that we can restore power all the way up to the home if there's any issue there.
So specifically, like, what would you see at a house that would tell you this house is not ready? I mean, I could imagine that a lot of lines have been, had trees laying on them. How do you know if it's ready to be energized?
So I'd encourage people to look at our website and our social media. We're putting those pictures and graphics up. It's called a weatherhead. It's the pipe that comes out of your meter box and it goes up through your roof, oftentimes or on the side of the house. It is the wire from the pole that is going to that home. That is what we're looking for. It will look like it has been pulled away from the home, and that's what that needs to be vertically mounted and attached to the home before we can restore that.
So if that weatherhead is at an angle and not straight up, you got a problem. If it's straight up, but the maybe there's slack in the wire, you may be okay.
That is right, but it's safe to go ahead and get an electrician to make a look at that to make sure you are prepared for when that power is restored to the main line.
Help me with the order of operations here. Do you essentially need crews to clear the roads before NES can actually do its work?
Yeah, in this situation, it was a lot of road clearing, and so partnership between NDOT and our vegetation crews have been clearing the trees out of the way to get to where we need to go. Then we remove the trees to be able to reconstruct the line. Then we dig a hole for the new poles that might need to go in, build a pole, and then string the wire. So this is a multi-staged event, and which is exemplary of how much time it takes to get this done.
If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. On the line is Brent Baker, Vice President of Nashville Electric Service, who's been working overtime along with basically everybody else who's in the power business right now. Do you all have any special technology you've needed to kind of deal with the conditions? I could have sworn I saw a picture of some tank-looking machine that maybe works on the ice.
I'm not familiar with what you've seen. So,
well, it had tracks. Yeah. It had tracks instead of wheels. I just had not seen this machine on your social media.
Yeah, there are track machines that can get you in through fields and other places that may be difficult with ice or soil that might not be able to get a vehicle through as easy. So we do have track machines, and just where they're deployed and how many are there deployed. I haven't had an update on that. Yeah.
How does NES prioritize where to put effort? And I asked this. We had a caller earlier this hour, Mark, who asked, like his neighborhood has power and his 92-year-old mother-in-law who lives next door does not, and he just wants to talk to someone at NES about how to get the situation assessed. This sort of like, why does my neighbor have power and I don't? Is that a question you all can handle at NES right now?
So it is something we've actually also put out on our social media to help people understand that so they can get a better understanding. Maybe they can also look around and understand what's happening and give us eyes on the ground as well. As we restore from an event like this, the first phase is stabilization, and priority is those critical infrastructure like hospitals, water systems, and emergency services, and then into things like nursing homes and moving on. So that is the main way we are moving through this. For those situations you mentioned, and our heart goes out to somebody with a 92-year-old mother or a 92-year-old neighbor without power. It is something that, depending on whether it's a weatherhead or some other situation, is something that, without looking at it, it is difficult to diagnose. We would ask that customer to let us know. Just know that sometimes right now there's still a lot of work ahead of us with those 1,000 to 2,000 line customer lines to get up.
Is there what's the best way to kind of get to a human to sort of talk through the specifics?
Yeah, so our phone number is the best way to do that. We do have high call volume right now, so that is our best way to do that right now.
Talk to me about other kind of priorities. We had this question on the show yesterday. Like, is there a priority list for people with medical equipment that maybe have battery backup but are not going to last for long?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it starts off with transmission lines, substation, hospitals, water systems, those kind of critical infrastructure. Next in our process is the critical care customers that might have a note in our system because they have a medical need. The challenge with this, if we cannot get to that customer, if we cannot get the lines cleared fast enough, if that is something the customer needs medical attention for, we know that the mayor has done a good job of getting the partnerships with the fire department, police department, and others to be able to get those customers help where needed. Getting to a location that has power or getting to a medical facility, or all of our medical facilities have power, is the important thing for those customers.
I think all of your customers, I assume, got this email about whether their house is ready to receive power. What does that do for you all? How does NES use that info?
Yeah, so we get that information out so that we can have that partnership with the community and the customers to be able to know whether they are able to receive the power and get that information back and forth. So that just helps us all work together so that we can get our meter crews out to look at things and to begin to make that progress as we potentially start to turn into that phase on some of our circuits.
A spokesperson for Middle Tennessee Electric was talking about crews. I mean, not wearing down. I think they're not slowing down, but point is, they're now going to sort of be going on several 16-hour shifts. What's the plan for the next few days? Because I assume this is another, week's worth of work, maybe more?
So we're still making estimates on that. We know we'll be through the weekend, and we'll be giving more details on how long this is going to be, but this is prolonged. And I want to recognize the men and women in the field, linemen, engineers, operators in our control room. They are working around the clock in really difficult and dangerous conditions, so let's not forget how dangerous. And then also, a lot of these people have power out at their homes as well. Our local crews are maybe having spouse and children without power and having to work around the clock in this condition. So we will continue to support them with every effort we can to keep them working fresh and be able to be safe. Safety is our main focus. We do not want anybody, one of our employees, one of our contractors, or any customer getting hurt in this situation.
I know you all are taking a lot of calls right now, and a lot of questions are on people's minds who are listening and wondering, well, what about my situation? Are there a couple of big issues that are coming up that you could address right now so people could save a phone call?
So right now we are this morning we put out information about the areas where we have 1,000 customers more on a main circuit that we're dedicating crews around. There's far more crews than what this is, but in that morning review, we mentioned Brick Church, North Nashville, Bellevue, West Nashville, Hendersonville, Elysian Fields, Madison, Rosebank, East Nashville, Goodlettsville, Forest Hills, Brentwood, all areas that we have a concentration of workforce. We have workforce all over the community. So just make sure that just information is getting out so we can continue to inform people of how much we're working.
Is your point there that people might be stuck in their homes and just looking out the window and saying, I haven't seen a crew anywhere?
Yeah, we want to make sure people know that we have to get the main lines up first and get the high volume of customers up before we can get back into some of the neighborhoods.
Last thing before we let you go, the power grid itself, obviously, not obviously, but if I understand correctly, the power comes from the Tennessee Valley Authority, NES, does the local, I think the word would be distribution. You help me out here. But Is there any worry about the grid this week? Because it's going to be very cold, unusual circumstances here with so many people already without power. But should people be worried about the grid itself as we deal with these single-digit temperatures overnight?
Yeah. So Tennessee Valley Authority continues to be able to make it through this cold weather. They've added 2,000 megawatts of generation in the last couple of years. So they continue to have good performance on their power plants and are making it through. So we're feeling good about where we are right now, and we'll continue to monitor the situation.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brent Baker. Is there power at your house?
Just came on. Yeah, I ended up having a couple days without power, so we did just get power on.
Well, listen, leaving us with a little word of encouragement right here. Brent Baker of Nashville Electric Service, thank you so much for your work this week and beyond.
Thank you so much for getting the message out.
Well, if just to sort of recap here for a moment, we've got a lot of headway has been made on getting people back on the grid. But word from Middle Tennessee Electric is that things are a little slow going at this point, with about 2,300 customers remaining. More than 100,000 people on NES power are still going to be a little while longer. Could be through the end of the week for folks and beyond. Brent Baker from NES telling us that it will be it's going to take a while for them to even kind of predict when the end of this will be. Thank you so much for tuning in this hour, and we'll be back with updates. You can check in at WPLN.org or the WPLN Instagram page for the latest news from the newsroom. This is Nashville's a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by the team, Josh Deep and Mary Mancini, Tasha A.F. Limley, our board operators, Liv Lombardi, with help from Benny the dog today, who's running around here. Masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Nina Cardona here in the studio, who's been at the station since Sunday to keep you updated. Please get some rest. The conversation doesn't end here. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. You can also find us on Instagram at thisisnashville_WPLN. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Stay warm.